Hey guys, so you might have seen the Math SL video, and this is for all you Math HL kids. So let's start. This is we're doing differentiation. So in the most simple terms, we're going to start off by differentiating a power function, such as 3x squared. What you do here is you bring the power down to multiply by the coefficient, and you subtract 1. So you'd get 6x, 2 times 3, to the power of 2 minus 1, 1, which is just 6x. So in general, for any power, fractional, negative, or integer, what would happen is you bring the power down, so you get na times the coefficient, nax, and then you subtract 1 from the power, n minus 1. This will work for any power function. Sorry guys. And now, so that's the most basic. Now let's move on to trigonometry. So in terms of trigonometry, we'll start with the sine function. With the sine function, it will become cosine, and you multiply by the coefficient. So 3 cosine of 3x. And similarly for any value, any coefficient of x, n, it will become n times the coefficient, a, cosine of nx. Then, for the cosine function, when you differentiate, it will become negative sine. So it will become negative 4 cosine of 4x. And in general, for any cosine function, it will become negative na sine of 4x. This should be a sine, sorry. And for the tangent function, what happens is it becomes a secant squared. So it'll become 5 secant squared of 5x. And similarly for any value, it become an secant squared of n of x. It's you keep the e. You just multiply by the coefficient. So here it's a negative 1, so it'll become negative e to the negative x. And for in general, it'll just become n a e to the power of n x. And then for natural log, it just becomes 1 over x. And for any coefficient of ln of 3x, surprisingly, it'll just become a over x, with the inside being ignored. Thank you. And now I'll be discussing how you differentiate when you have two functions multiplied by each other. Here, the first function will be a, and the second function will be. So the first thing you do is you differentiate the first function, a, and you multiply by the second function, b, and you add this to the derivative of the second function, b prime, and multiply it by a. So as you can see, the derivative here is a prime, and then you multiply by b, and then you do the same thing over here, you differentiate, and then you multiply by a. And that gives you the differential of the whole equation. But what if your two functions are being divided by each other? This is your first function, and this is your second function. What you do is, again, similarly, you do the differential of the first function, a, and multiply by the denominator function, b, and then you subtract the derivative of b, and multiply it by a. That gives you your top line. However, the extra step is then you make sure you're dividing all of it by b squared. The function, all of it squared. And then the last rule is when you have a function of a function, such as f of g of x. Here, to differentiate this, you differentiate g of x, which is the function on the inside, and you multiply that differential by the differential of f while keeping gx in the same position, which gives you this equation. So an example of the product, an area where you use the product function is that this is what you need to differentiate. So again, do the same thing. Your first equation, your first function is sine of negative 3x. Here, let's differentiate that. You get negative 3 cosine of negative 3x. And as the rule states, you have to multiply it by your second function, e to the 2x. And then you add. Now if we differentiate this, you get 2e to the 2x. And you multiply by your original function, sine of negative 3x. And then you could obviously factorize this by e to the 2x to simplify. And now, in the next example, we'll be doing the quotient rule. Here, let's differentiate the top, which will give you negative half x to the power, positive half to the power of negative half. As you can rewrite this as x to the power of half. I'm multiply by cosine of x. And subtract from this should be negative sine of x times root of x. And remember to divide it all by cosine squared of x. And here this will obviously simplify to addition.